Welcome, Paul Rogers, to the Larpar Show, where we talk about what is money, what is coming, and how to protect your family. So, Paul worked as an environmental uh, enforcement for the federal and state agencies for nearly 15 years before changing careers to personal finance. After working for over a decade with a major national broker firm, he founded his own independent wealth management and financial planning firm with the country's largest independent broker dealer. He was formerly a registered certified financial planner and managed many tens of millions of dollars for clients. He sold his practice then, and he decided to move to India, where he discovered yoga. We can talk a little bit about that as well. And when he realized, when he came back just before the pandemic exploded in 2020, he realized we were in the next critical stage of a new world order that had been developing over the past couple of decades. That's when he discovered Bitcoin. So, Paul, thank you for your time, and it's great to have you on the show. And let's just dive in and
Great.
share your story. How did you discover Bitcoin?
Okay. Well, thank you, Lawrence. And it was a pleasure to meet you on our Paradise of Midair at Bitcoin Atlantis and to have this opportunity to chat a little bit. So I think everybody's story is all a little bit different, but we end up at a similar place. So yeah, my story in Bitcoin is a little different because I came from the world of traditional financial planning, having spent, as you mentioned, 2 decades doing personal financial planning in the US, working for a big national firm, and then having my own firm. And, I was dyed in the wool for the old, principles of buy quality investments, be well diversified, invest on principles and not predictions, and hold things for the long run, and all the stuff that worked really well for the last, 40 years or so. And so, I love my clients. And one of the things that I observed with them, though, is that really understanding that, money is just a tool. It's not about the money, but our culture is so indoctrinated into wanting to see more and more money that I worked hard to shift my practice and my clients' views as they began to do retirement planning, to think about what do they really want to do with their life if they don't have to work in the same way. And, most of them didn't have a vision for it. And so I became a retirement coach also to help people with that. And then I saw people who had, more money than they were ever going to need, but not really thinking about what good they could do with it. So as I say, I shifted my practice and actually called it mindful wealth management to try to get people to be more mindful about understanding what money was and what they could do with their wealth. And, it's a hard shift to make because the culture is so much about, CNBC and what's happening today, and, on money and this stock or that stock, or what the Fed said or not said. And so I got to a point where, while I love my clients and I enjoyed the work, I really realized that something else was calling me. And, for a number of years, I'd really gone back to looking at the same questions that I was asking my clients. What's really important to you? What do you want your life to represent? What is this all about? And so I realized I had to take the advice that I was giving my clients and live my own dream. And so I decided that I was in a point where I needed to move on from the wealth management practice, to pass that on to someone else, and go seek a new adventure. And so that's what I did. It started a journey for me. And, as soon as I sold my practice, I moved to a warmer climate down in Florida before starting this venture to Portugal. But I had been into lots of philosophical, spiritual exploration. Many years ago, I discovered yoga and started working with a teacher in India. And so as soon as I was free of the obligations of my business, I went to India for some long deferred yoga training, just as the pandemic was breaking. And sure enough, when I got there, things started getting crazy in the States. The lockdowns started happening. And in fact, while we're at this facility in northern India, we get to go out and explore and do things, we ended up being locked down in the facility for an entire month. And I completed the training. And then the question was, how was I going to get back home? And my wife was very concerned about whether I was going to get back home or not, because she had stayed home this time around. And so sure enough, I got back on a State Department arranged repatriation flight, one of the few out of Delhi, and had an experience that no one in India, I think, is ever going to repeat again, which is going through the streets that were deserted. You know, India is
so busy over there in Delhi and all, like millions, if
oh
not
yeah, you know,
tens of millions.
it's a place that makes you leave all of your judgments and expectations about the way things are supposed to be, whether it comes to the way traffic is supposed to operate or whatever. And you get jolted out of your complacency, and which is one of the real lessons of India. But in any event, so driving for 5 hours from northern India into Delhi on roads, going through police checkpoints, but the roads basically being deserted is an experience that at least I hope no one ever has to go through and have again. So, but it was fascinating. And so then I came home and realized everything that I had learned, everything that I practiced, all the foundation of, you know, the financial planning that I'd done, that I was going to then apply for myself, didn't seem to make sense anymore. And that's, you know, what then started me down the Bitcoin journey.
Yeah, yeah. You probably, what's the word I'm looking for? You felt something wasn't right. Your mind was probably telling you, not your brain, but maybe your mind or your aura was telling you there's something else to what's going on here.
Yes, and you know, sadly, I didn't listen to my wife as well as I should have many years ago when she raised this idea. She said, "What are things going to go crazy here? And should we look at this Bitcoin?" And I said, "No, you know, I thoroughly dismissed that when you're doing traditional financial planning and
Yeah,
wealth management. You know, that's crazy." And of course, no one knew at the time in the mid 20 teens whether it was going to pan out or not. But as I told her, I said, you know, if we have a collapse of the financial system, we're going to have a whole lot more things to worry about. She reminds me that, you know, we could have bought Bitcoin at a whole lot less, but at any event, we're here now. So, you know, what's new?
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
But
it takes hundreds and thousands of hours, especially for someone that understands, you know, investing and wants to really understand how this works and fits in. So,
yeah. But at least you're here now. You're ahead of a lot of other people. That's what we have to say.
absolutely,
You know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
I was still buying Bitcoin this week. I bought Bitcoin today. Bought
yeah.
Bitcoin the other day. So once you understand this and you understand the value of what we're buying and the future of money and what's coming,
Mm-hmm.
I can't see anything else really to be buying or investing in anymore.
Yeah, no, it's you know, it's one of the things that, again, coming from the background that I did and looking at my options, if I hadn't found this and explored it and embraced it, I wouldn't know what to do. I would be scared because the light has gone on, and you realize going back into the shadows, and you know, Bitcoiners talk about falling down the rabbit hole, and I think it's I think the analogy is a little bit more, and I use this actually in my book, you know, Plato's allegory of the cave, where you have prisoners shackled with a light behind them looking at shadows on the wall, and they think the shadows are real. And when a prisoner is released from the shackles and goes and ascends the cave into the light and realizes what's really going on, but then comes back down to try to convince others, no, these shadows are not real. Look what's going on here. They're projections of things. It's a hard sell.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants to, you know, it's very hard psychologically to distance yourself and disconnect from what you believed was reality when there's a new source of light.
Yeah. And once you see the light, you get a lot of hope, don't you, for the future? And it
Absolutely. It really does.
changes your whole mindset of everything and everything around you and what's been going on for me, for the last 50 years. What's been going on? What was I taught? You know,
Yes.
opens up a whole different outlook for me anyway on life. And I've
No,
changed my whole life completely to
absolutely.
from where I
And that's
was.
where, yeah, that's where, for me, it really fit with the deeper exploration of, life and value and meaning and purpose and the interconnection of the whole, web of life, as opposed to us all thinking we're these isolated little silos operating independently of each other. So, joining those two things together and that search that I was on, which propelled me to India and then propelled me to now look at a whole different, economic and monetary model, and realize how much more it affects than just economics and money, as many others, Safety and others have made, clear that you start thinking about. I hadn't really thought about it that way. And it does shift your whole perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recently joined, well, in September of last year, Safety's uh, economics course. And I
Mm-hmm.
never done anything like that before. Like I ran multiple businesses and some big businesses, but I never really studied about what is money.
Yeah.
And in that course now, we do live training with Safe, and he's going through his book, his new book, yeah,
Principles
and
of economics.
yeah, principles of economics, and it's just completely different to
No. Yeah.
what I thought I knew and what I thought was correct.
Right. Well, and that's what I realized when I started in this path. And of course, Bitcoin Standard was one of the first books that I read. But coming from the world of finance and understanding investments and being a certified financial planner, which in the U.S. is the highest designation for a financial advisor, and understanding Sharpe ratios and risk adjusted returns and all that kind of stuff. What I realized is nobody really talked about what money really is.
Yeah,
It was just an assumption, and it's as if you're in a board game, and here are the rules, and move your pieces around it without examining what is this game that I'm playing, and why are the rules this way, and is this the game I really want to play?
yeah. And I think a lot of it is, well, we just accept what we're fed. And we're conditioned to do that from an early day, from when our schooling days. We sit
Mhm.
there, you know what I mean? Just be quiet, sit in your seat and just accept it all. We're conditioned to, from a very early age, of how we are taught, yeah, not to question as much, yeah. Ask a few questions, but not to really question anything and just do as you're told.
No, absolutely. And again, that's a dovetailing into the exploration that I've done in a lot of different wisdom traditions, not only yoga, but Toltec wisdom traditions from that are grounded in ancient Mexico. Many traditions. I mean, I was a philosophy major when I was in college, so these were things that have interested me, and many Eastern traditions. But part of the fundamental premise of a lot of those traditions is to examine the belief structures that we have adopted, that we have been conditioned for. Don Miguel Ruiz in the Toltec tradition, the Four Agreements, calls it domesticated. We become domesticated to follow the rules. In our economic systems in the West, your job is just to be a cog in the machine of productivity to feed the beast of the existing economic machine. And so, Bitcoin, whether that's the thing that starts you to examine those things, it does, as you mentioned earlier, or whether you already had that orientation to say, you know what, something here doesn't seem right, and I want to understand it. and I want to layer all these things together to build my own more informed, more aware, more enlightened, if you will, context for all that's going on in society and culture and economics, spirituality, et cetera, so that you can embrace, one's own vision of life, and dream your own dream instead of adopting the dreams that others have given you as to this is what you're supposed to do, this is who you are, these are the beliefs you're supposed to have. So shedding that is not an easy thing, but it's an important thing to live an authentic life.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why as well, I think younger people that learn about Bitcoin earlier, yeah. Look, it took me 48 years to come on to what was really going on. Took
I got
you a
even
little
a
bit
few more
longer,
on you than that. So,
yeah. So the kids in their 20s, if they can grasp this and learn about this before they really go out there into the big bad world, they'll have a head start in front of everybody else and their peers.
absolutely. No, I think it is really important. I mean, I've observed, and my wife and I have observed, because she does a lot of things that involve a lot of young people, and I think there's a generational shift. I mean, we can see it in an economic level, and there's people who go, oh, they're not as productive, they don't want to work, what have you. But there's something else going on. I think they have a different view, many, of what's important in life. They're trying to create their own understanding, that, as is typical, doesn't fit with the parents' generation that says this is how you're supposed to do it. And I realized this in raising my own children, and got lessons from them to say, this was the program I knew. This is what you were supposed to do. You went to college, you got a degree, you got a job, et cetera. That pathway for a lot of, younger people now, one, it doesn't work the same way as it used to, for us. I mean, in many years, you could get a college degree, and no matter what it is in, it was a ticket to get you somewhere. It's not much of a ticket anymore, and of course, it comes with a huge debt load. And I think some people are realizing that. And so, then if you discover Bitcoin too, again, those things begin to come together to challenge the whole fundamental framework and say, we want to create something new. And that is the hopeful and exciting part.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. Perfect. And then so let's bring it back then a little bit when you came back to the States, and then how
Yeah.
did you
So
discover Bitcoin and your next journey there from there about moving around? You said you moved to Florida then, was it? Or
yeah, we had moved to Florida for a variety of reasons. One, we had lived in Virginia, and we were ready to get out of Virginia for many years. But once I was no longer tied to the practice and just had to consult, we moved to Florida. Much better climate, on the beach, et cetera. And but of course, COVID had just broken, and so all of a sudden, the life we expected to sort of build there and building new community and things, although we had also looked at it as a possible stepping stone to moving internationally. But everything got frozen. And so we debated, well, we were renting an apartment that we assumed would be just a short term before potentially moving overseas. But now an overseas move was not in the cards. We couldn't even travel overseas. So we ended up buying a house. And we loved the house, but began thinking deeper about, what was really going on. But one of my big aha moments is when I, saw with the craziness of the economy, and again, being a traditional finance guy, I'm like, all right, how do you shut down all productivity for many months, if not longer, all right, put all this money in the system and it not have some economic, impact? I mean, you can't shut productivity and expect corporate profits to go up and therefore stock prices to go up. And yet they did. But when I saw the value of our house go up 20-25% in a year, I had that aha moment, and I said, wait a minute, this is insane. Okay. Sure, more people could work from home. People from the Northeast were moving to Florida. That had a little impact, but that doesn't explain this. So what does explain it? And that's when I really began the journey and realized the impact of monetary inflation, the excessive levels of stimulus that went into the system to deal with to allegedly to deal with COVID, and all of the money printing is then what drove me to go, it's not that the value of my house is going up, it's what that I'm buying it with is going down.
Yeah.
How does that work? What do I need to know? And so, that drove me to, all of the books and all of the classic, literature, from Bitcoin Standard and Fiat Standard and many others, and through to Lynn Alden's Broken Money now recently, and some deeper work like Bitcoin is Venice, which is a wonderful book. It gets deep in some of the monetary and investing theory, which appealed to me because I understand modern portfolio theory and they dissect that. But it drove me all down that route. And when I saw that light, then I began trying to share it with some friends and, family and people we'd have over for dinner. And of course, the eyes glaze over and they go like, I don't know what you're talking about. It seems crazy, etc. And so my wife was like, well, we got to have more of these dinners and explain it to people. And I'm like, I don't want to be doing this constantly. So I said, you know what? I'll create some YouTube videos. And so I created a series of 10 YouTube videos to try to explain what money is, how historically it's worked, what Bitcoin's all about, what the technology is, et cetera. And I'm like, somebody asked me about it, I could say, if you really want to know, you got to do some work, okay? Sitting in front of the TV isn't that hard of a work, watching, 10-minute videos. If you won't do that, what am I going to do? But, at least start with that. So
That was
that got
great.
super into it,
Yeah. What was the YouTube channel called?
So it's under my moniker of Bits of Wisdom .io. So
Oh yeah, okay. It's on the website, is it? It's on the website.
yes,
It's connected to the website. Yeah, okay. We put a link on
I
there
have it
anyway.
there
Yeah.
on bitsofwisdom.io is the link to that. So it was done in the run up in the last bull market. And then, of course, as we all know, everything quieted down for a couple of years and nobody really wanted to talk much about it. And it was hard to convince many other people about it. So
that's when I see my opportunity. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
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 And it was only because I had done so much work in it and I understood that this is the future. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was like once it really got the the aha moment or the light bulb really came in, I said, okay, we need to start stacking as much as
Yeah.
we can. And I need to start looking around me of what I can sell or transition from a physical asset that we have back into
Mm-hmm.
fiat and then into a digital asset. But the strongest and the fastest moving digital asset that the world has ever seen.
Yes, yes. And as you begin to embrace more understanding of the shifting technology platforms, and how things are evolving from an analog to a digital age, if you explore any of not only Jeff Booth's work, but Peter Diamandis, et cetera, all these people, to realize, again, so much is going to change. And as usual, most of society is not prepared. And we do what we can to, I can't see the vision of exactly what AI is going to be and how it's going to change things. But I do know that, as you mentioned, yeah, I have to do what I can to step aside from the arrows from the traditional financial system, which have been launched, which, are going to skewer me if I'm standing in their way, holding a 40% bond portfolio as they get, blasted with debt levels. So, that doesn't work anymore, isn't going to work. And so where do we step to?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I use a similar uh, uh, explanation that we use, but I say to people that I know, standing on a train track. I can see a juggernaut coming from 2020. I've
Right.
well stepped off that train track now, but Mark, you're still on the train track, and it's,
Mhm.
that juggernaut is getting closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to protect yourself. What's going to happen if you stay on that train track?
Yeah. Well, that dovetails in, and I say this in the book that I'm writing and trying to complete now. But I call it sort of the karma of money. And most people have an idea that karma is, oh, you must have done something bad before, so something bad is happening to you now, and you have to pay for it. It's like some giant ledger of good and bad deeds and punishment in the sky. Which is a very naive and superficial level of understanding of what the concept of karma really means, because karma is just cause and effect. Things happen and they have effects. My teacher in India actually, in questioning him about it, used this analogy of, if someone launches an arrow, that is a cause, and it will have an effect. That arrow will fly. Now, it may find its target or it may not. It may inflict pain or it may fall uselessly on the ground. But if you're standing in the way of that cause, you may be affected. You may be pierced with that arrow. But if you step aside to a different level, get off the train track, or understand that arrows are being launched, but you know what? I don't have to take them. I don't have to play in that game. You can step aside. We can do that with Bitcoin. You do that personally when people tells you, oh, you're a stupid bald guy who's falling for this, scam of Bitcoin. Well, that says more about them and their ignorance, compared to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right, I may be wrong, but their insults are about them, not about me. And that's transcending, that level of cause and effect. You can think what you think,
Yeah. At least we're taking action and we're trying to do something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but a lot of people, unfortunately,
Educated and informed action, and that's the hard thing. And again, in our culture, again, if you're just playing the game of Monopoly and moving your pieces around the board, and the rules have been given to you, once you go past go, you get $200, and this is the way it works. It's hard to question those rules and to understand, well, why were the rules created this way? And are there different rules of a different game that, might be more advantageous to me? When you are domesticated in a system, you do not know, and it's very hard to see what is going on. The more we go on this journey, the more we discover more and more. That's like, I hadn't really connected that.
Yeah. It is so amazing. Once you discover Bitcoin and you go down that journey, you really do start seeing a lot of what's really going on, and it wakes you up to what's really going on around us and around you. And then, as I say to people, knowledge is power, but there's no point having that power, or you're not going to get that power unless you take an action and you do something with the knowledge that you're learning and put it into action.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that, coming from my orientation in reading lots of books, seeing lots of dialogue, being on the Bitcoin Twitter space, and realizing, there's a lot of dialogue which is really informative. There's also some which is less so, like anything, and with millions of people involved, there's lots of people slinging arrows at each other. And that's ultimately not going to propel us forward to, what the world we want to experience. Different points of view are always going to be there, and that's good and healthy to have these discussions. But what got me into deciding to write this book was thinking about, not only do we have to probe beyond the economic and monetary theory models of what is money to recognize, money is our life's labor. Okay. Money is our work. Okay. And, where does our work come from? It's driven by our ideally driven by our consciousness state, by our talents, our interests, our abilities, the passions that we have in life, whether it's being a farmer and growing food, or engineering a building, or composing music or art. Ultimately, it's our life expression. And that life expression is ultimately the ability that we each have to direct our consciousness into doing something that we want to bring forth, into community, to provide value to others. Now we're all going to have different assessments of value, but are we contributing, or are we extracting? And I think that's one of the fundamental problems we have in our economic systems right now, is we have many extractive efforts of people pulling things out of the system rather than truly contributing meaningful value to humanity. And that's what money ultimately is. It's just that tool. And so if we're not encouraging people to truly do what's of value to themselves and to contribute value to others, we're shorting the potential for 8 billion people on this planet. And the reality is that while we may all be sovereign individuals in how we direct our free will and our consciousness, we are all a connected entity on this little blue dot floating in space. And systems theory in biology all says that, that's clear. Our little individual psyches wants to think we're some independent actor that can do whatever we want. But it doesn't work that way. And so, this web of consciousness sometimes, as we talked earlier, domesticates us as to our limitations. But it also gives us the opportunity to really be connected and contribute value. And my thesis in the book basically is, the underlying premise behind all that, while it doesn't always look that way, I'm going to say, why don't we call it love? I mean, what's going to hurt if we say, what, the underlying connection between all of us, between everything, between all of our states of consciousness, between all we do to add value, is the protocol of love. And if we develop an economic and monetary system, if we let Bitcoin be governed by that principle of love, then we can, as the saying goes, fix the money and fix the world. If we root it back in old structures, old viewpoints, number go up, let's get rich, I've got mine, you don't have yours, tough shit for you, that's an old mindset. Let's just trade it and sell it and buy it back. I mean, that's an extractive technology. That's not an additive activity. So my effort is trying to bring into the space a thought from some deeper traditions and some various wisdom traditions from East and West to bring these things together and realize, if we really want this to work, it's not just the technology, it's how technology is used by human consciousness to direct it where we want. So.
Yeah. And it's true as well, when you get into this and you start learning about it and you start meeting different people, there's so many people out there that are contributing to this. And just for example, like us here doing this Zoom, it's going to go out, somebody might catch it somewhere, it might change somebody's outlook or perspective on something, and they might start learning a little bit more, and hopefully they can, in a few years or maybe quicker than that, understand it the way we do.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think the opportunity we have is to inspire people to, create the new system, as, the famous quote of R. Buckminster Fuller. I mean, you don't create this new system by just destroying the old. You create a new system that makes the old system obsolete. So if we can create this new model and have it be guided by, universal principles, all right, and a grounding that we can all, connect to, that's how we're going to create, a new model you know, for life on this planet and the opportunities we have and beyond this planet potentially, you know. So I think that's important, you know. First principles, you know, what's the first principle? You know, I'm going to say, you know, you can believe it's love or you can not believe it's love. But if you don't believe it's love, what's it going to hurt to believe, to act as if it's love? I don't think that's going to hurt anybody. I think that's going to make the world a whole lot better place.
I think so. There's more love out there, and everybody's more happier, and they're instead of arguing, they're hugging each other, or you know what I mean, they're more welcoming instead of doing other things like dropping bombs on each other. You know, it's
Yeah,
better, isn't it? You know,
absolutely.
the, the
You
world
know,
has gone like
and
unbelievable.
that's what's going to drive us to create more value. And it's that value which is captured in the technology of money, which is why the more we accrete value to a limited supply of, I use an analogy in my book of batteries, the battery that holds it and actually conserves it. But the more energy we're putting in there from the value we create, that's why the value will, as Michael Saylor, you know, go to infinity. It sounds crazy in a traditional system. It is. But if you twist it a little bit and think, if we are trying to capture the additive value of all of humanity's efforts, if we're really adding value, not extracting, right? Then, you know, it isn't about, you know, Bitcoin number going up. It's about Bitcoin being a pure store of the valuable contribution of all humanity.
Yeah, it's a whole much better, isn't it? It's a whole different level.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, again, if we're guided by that principle underlying, and then all the people who are developing technologies, all the people who are exploring, you know, the open source softwares and looking at that, the you know, the technology models of centralized control, whether it's, you know, Facebook and Google who are monetizing us, you know, it can shift the perspective on that to realize, you know, again, they're extracting value from us to monetize it. Now, again, they're very useful technologies, very useful platforms. Otherwise, we wouldn't use them. But do we want to move more and more towards that? Or do we want to move away from that to something that we're all have a stake in, all 8 billion people all over the world?
Yeah. And that's down to education on a personal level. So people can understand that and change their own ways and we found a better way. And there's a lot of people like us that have found a better way. So other people have to do their work to find that better way. It's not just going to be handed to you.
No, and
Like
I
what a
think
lot of people think it might, but it's all about learning and educating yourself. And it
yeah,
takes time. Time is a
it
big thing in this.
you know, the challenge I think we have is I think there's a growing sense throughout the world, and I think we're seeing that expression in various populist movements, right or left or wherever, that something is wrong here. Something doesn't feel right. Something isn't working. I don't know what it is. You know, politicians will point a finger at some easy solution, usually wrong, and you know, it can resonate with people because at least somebody's pointing out something that's wrong that resonates with me. The opportunity we all have is to point to the real issue of what's wrong. And of course, that comes up against some very powerful forces, the most powerful, you know, forces, you know, politically, governmentally, economically, on the planet. But that's the opportunity we have. And I think that's the snowball that, you know, we will that we are starting and that many are starting to get people to recognize, and it'll find its appeal because there's that sense. I think because there's that sense that something is wrong. You know, who's going to give me a solution to this? It might seem appealing. Oh, well, you know, the government will just, you know, hand me checks. And at first blush, you know, if they're handing checks to everybody, why not hand a check to me? I mean, if they're going to hand a check to, all the big banks and bail them out, I'll take my bailout too. It's only natural. But again, I think we all know
It's only a
it's
short-term
crazy.
fix.
You can't,
It's only a short-term fix. There's
right,
more
right,
coming. There's nothing
right.
for, as they say,
No,
was
no,
it? There's no free dinner
right.
here.
No family meeting in a household would say, well, let's see, we're spending 40% of our income to pay our credit card interest payments, and we have to keep charging more for our food. I think this should work well. Let's just keep doing it. Common sense, everybody knows it's wrong, but this is where common sense gets thrown out of the window and fancy terms get used, and people stand in front of microphones with nice suits on who act like they're really intelligent and who have high paying positions and power, and like the old wizard behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz. Well,
Yeah. And I think that's a good point that you're pointing out there. Maybe in the West as well, that there's not enough pain has occurred yet. People can feel it, but there's a lot of people that are up there that are in different positions that are still spurting the same nonsense out to other people. Yeah, because they're comfortable. And there's
right.
financial advisors out there that are comfortable and they're still selling the same script to their people that they've been telling for the last
Yeah.
10,
Yeah.
15 years, 20 years. But,
Sure.
I can see big changes coming, and things are going to move so fast and so quickly when these changes happen. Will people have enough time to miss that arrow or get off that train track? Me
Yeah.
personally, I don't think so.
No, I think it's going to be very hard. And actually it came up in a dialogue yesterday with somebody about, what's going to happen to all the folks, our friends or family, who don't see this coming and yes, are hit by the juggernaut on the train tracks. But, again, as, Alex Gladstein would point out, check your financial privilege. I mean, we especially people in the United States, and many developed, Western European countries, don't feel the pain. And so you can dismiss it until it becomes so bad. But, if you're in Venezuela or Lebanon and in Nigeria, it's devastating. It's just absolutely devastating. And so that's also part of the message that needs to get out more. Again, at Bitcoin Atlantis, hearing B Trust initiative in Africa to have that Jack Dorsey contributed to have people developing, technology within the continent as opposed to being given to the continent. Most people have no idea that there's a currency controlled, by the French government in 15, I think it is, countries in Africa. It's just not our experience. It's not in our mindset. I used to joke when we moved to Madeira in Portugal here and we're watching the news, and I'd tell people back in the United States and watching French 24 or whatever, she says, you know what? I just found out there's this whole continent called Africa, and apparently things happen there, and none of it's ever discussed in the US media. Like none of these people matter. There aren't governments, there aren't politicians, there aren't poverty, there aren't people doing, brilliant things. Just isn't discussed.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I know. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit about as well, okay? You've been in the financial um arena for a long time. Is there something in there in America as well, okay, that certain states in America, if you live in certain states in America, if you live there for so much length of a time, that and a lot of people in the West think that we're free, okay, and here's just something that's popped into my mind. Some states in America, if you live there for a certain length of time, you're obliged to pay taxes, even if you live that state.
Yeah, we have two unique things in the United States. First of all, from no matter what state you're from, if you leave the United States and no longer reside there, it is only one of two countries in the world the United States, and Eritrea, which claims you as a tax resident and requires you to file federal tax returns, potentially pay federal taxes, as well as report financial holdings held in bank accounts throughout the world. It is the most draconian system pretty much in existence. Layer that on top that there are 5 or 6 states that if you move overseas from one of those states, and that's one of the reasons we left Virginia to go to Florida, because Virginia was one of those states, that will assume that, well, of course, you would be coming back to the greatest country in the world, which is, you know, the brand of the United States, and you would be coming back to our state. So we assume you're still a resident of our state, and therefore you are going to have to file a state tax return and pay any taxes due as still a resident of, you know, the state of Virginia, for example. Even if you don't reside there, you haven't lived there for 10 or 20 years.
So let me get this right. While you're away, living in a different country, you still have to contribute to the American system.
Right. It will claim you as a tax resident, will want to extract taxes. Now, different countries, depending on where income is earned and how things are done, it's an issue, but they will claim you as a tax resident and want to attempt to extract some level of taxation unless you can claim that a tax treaty exists that this income, for example, if it was earned in Portugal or earned somewhere else, is taxed in that country, so you get a credit for what happens in the US. But it makes things much more complicated and again, shows that reach that the United States has. It's a privilege for the US to be a global reserve currency. It may be a tremendous burden for many other people in the world to bear, to have that. But US citizens who attempt to extract themselves from that system, to move away from that arrow, it's not easy. It's not easy. And there are other countries purportedly that are contemplating some of those kind of measures. Making the freedom to move jurisdictional boundaries, even when invited to move to a new jurisdiction, making it more extractive.
All right.
And if you want to renounce your citizenship, it's a long process, and they will make you pay an exit tax.
Right.
You have to pay to get out. You have to pay to get out the gate.
There you go. So what are we really in that system? Are we stuck in there as slaves, really? And we have to buy our way out? When you think of it, you know, I've been studying the last year and a half a lot about sovereignty, like real sovereignty, though. A lot of people just throw that word out there. Yeah, and the difference between a man and a woman and a person. Yeah. And we can go into this later on ourselves anyway and discuss it about it. But there's a big difference in the status of a person, of a man and a woman and a person. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. I'm not an expert on it. As I said, I'm just still going on that journey and learning about it, but I'm learning a lot.
Well, there's a difference to me between the essence traits of the masculine and the feminine and the gender identity. My wife has done a lot of work in this area. And, you know, we all have our masculine and feminine sides at different times, and we may have them to different degrees, regardless of our gender or our gender identification. And they bring different strengths, you know, to us as individuals. And ultimately, the opportunity we have is to balance those perspectives within us, that, you know, that driving masculine force of protective and action-oriented, and perhaps the more heart-centered, reflective, intuitive sense that we have as the feminine. That's something that, you know, an externally oriented culture, all driven by rationality and science, dismisses the intuitive nature, those gut feelings, that heart sense. You know, if you've been in a relationship with a woman, or you are, You know, when she gives you, this is, you know, this is my gut, this is my intuition here, 9 times out of 10, it's right. And it should be listened to. It's just another way of receiving information. It just doesn't, you know, follow a mathematical formula. And, you know, we all have those things. And that's, you know, another issue of balance in our whole cultures.
Yeah. But what I'm talking about is something different, basically. Basically, when we were born, okay, and unknown to us, and I done it to my children as well, because I didn't know about this. I gave away the rights of my children to the state by creating a thing called a passport, right? They
Yeah.
were claimed before they hit the ground through the heel prick, and a passport was created, a document was created to give away ownership. When that was registered, when I went to register that birth certificate, the registration of that gave away the ownership of my child to the state, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it goes up even further. And then they're changed from a boy, which they were born as a boy, to a thing called a person.
Yeah.
I'm going to share some information with you about that. And
Yeah. And you know, it's again, it's something which we have an opportunity to figure out how we are going to transition between that, you know, uh, giving up certain rights to comply with the state system and certain benefits that states, you know, in our, you know, culture and society may provide, and certain challenges that without some level of control could be, you know, abused. So it's going to have to be thoughtfully done over time as to how we try to move beyond this limited nation state perspective we have, which again, if we go back to an approach of not who can gain more power in this situation, but you know what, we want to be guided by the principles of love, we'll probably end up with a better system than if we go, what can I extract from somebody else? How am I going to control somebody else by, you know, where you were born or how you're claimed or what your paperwork is?
yeah. It's very, very interesting. You know, it's very interesting. I'm always learning, you know.
Yeah, so many layers, you know.
Yeah. So let's jump into the fast forward a little bit. How did you end up going to Madeira? And explain that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So, you know, it's the idea of moving internationally was something that my wife had and I had contemplated for a while. And you know, because of a number of things that were going on in the United States, as well as a desire to just create a new lifestyle, have a new adventure, and be in an environment that really suited more what we wanted to do in the long term. And so we explored a variety of different places. You know, coming from the United States as opposed to, for example, being within the EU, you know, you have to find a jurisdiction that will bring you in, that will invite you in, that will allow you to, you know, pass certain hurdles. And Portugal is rising to the top of that list because they are welcoming for a variety of reasons, if you're, especially if you're economically independent. And so after exploring a few other places, we scheduled a trip to come to Portugal. It was canceled several times because of COVID. Madeira was not originally on our list because we had excluded it, saying, I don't know whether we really want to live on an island where we can't just drive and go explore Europe. And as an island, it doesn't have, you know, white sand beaches. So we had thrown it out originally, but after a couple of postponed trips and watching a few more videos, we said, no, we got to go check it out. So we went to Lisbon, we came to Madeira for 8 days, and then our plan was to go to the southern part of Portugal and the Algarve and explore from east to west there. And after about a week here, we're like, should we just stay here and not even finish the rest of the trip? One of the seminal moments was happened to be we were here on the 4th of July, which of course is not a big holiday in Portugal, but it is in our home country, the United States. And place we were staying happened to have concerts going on. It was the Funchal Jazz Festival. And I'm a jazz fan. I'm sitting out on the terrace and I hear Thelonious Monk playing. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So we go down, there's a jazz festival. And at night, they're playing. And parents are all just sitting around, very low-key environment, and their kids are just running all around the park. And they come back to mom or dad and tell them what they did, and then they run off. And my wife is looking at it like, where are these kids going? Their parents don't know where they are. That's not safe. And it's like, no, it is. We have normalized a lack of safety for kids to be able to run around and play in the park and do what they want. And it just was really striking. And so the next day we wake up and we find out that in the city we used to live in Virginia, at the place we used to go to for 4th of July fireworks and the picnics and all that kind of stuff, an attempt to disrupt that event in a terrorist style activity or whatever of people with weapons was just thwarted. So it was a place, we knew, and that people were trying to come into with guns. Well, that was thwarted, but that was the year that in Highland Park, Illinois, north of Chicago, and I used to live in Chicago, I knew Highland Park on their side, that in fact there was a shooting and many people died there. And so I'm like connecting, oh my God, I know that street there where those people are killed. I know that, 4th of July parade. I know where we were. And so it was just like, no, safety is really important. We finished the trip to the Algarve, came back and said, you know what, Madeira might not check some boxes, but it checks a big box of the heart, of the beauty, of just the amazing people that are here, just the community. It really has everything on a pretty small island, from the mountains to the ocean to great beauty, amazing climate, beautiful flowers. And so we went home, sold our house, sold everything, packed up a small crate and showed up here, and we're here in less than 6 months.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Very beautiful.
It's not without it. I caution everyone, it's not without a lot of work and a lot of, discomfort, and it's easier for some than others. But and it's something that, we've been preparing for a while, but have no regrets whatsoever about, it takes time to move into a new culture and adjust to new things, of course. But it's beautiful, as you saw when you were here. I mean, it's a beautiful island, and the people are really wonderful.
Yeah, you know what I picked up as well at the Madeira conference. I know Daniel Prince for some time. I've met him at a few events and we talk on Twitter. But I got his book at Madeira, and it's about him traveling around and like homeschooling his kids and just traveling around basically, because he was in the financial business as well for a long time. And it's really amazing. I started it there the other day, and Laura's gotten nearly 3/4 way through it, but that's something that you might want to check out as well. Daniel Prince's book. Yeah, I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah. No, it's
really.
I think the thing is, what's important is we all have our own particular, if we strip off what we're supposed to do, the limitations in the mind, the domestication, and allow ourselves to dream our own dream of what we want to experience in life, put some things in place, but don't let logic and I can't do this and the limitations prevent you from embracing the courage to go out and live the life you want to live. I mean, we have, only so many years are granted to us in this, in this form on this planet. What are you saving them for?
Yeah. Live life to the extent, a lot of people are all still, and a lot of my friends and family are still caught up in this whole rat race, whereas now I have freedom. I see hope coming. I have my insurance, I'm working less, I'm only doing like 3 days a week. I spend more time with the family, with Laura and the kids. And isn't that what life is about? Not being stuck on that wheel and you keep on going around and you just can't get out.
Yeah. One of the great things about moving internationally too, and especially to some place like Madeira, is there are so many people here from all over the world, from many different cultures. And so you get out of the limited view that one has by, only being in the US or only being in Ireland or only being in, China or South Africa. You see people's experience from all over the world. Obviously there's a commonality that we're all courageous enough and interested in enough to break out of those limiting things. But your whole worldview just expands to realize, what is going on throughout the world, and how people share common goals and interests, even though their background may be, very different, and the challenges that they faced, very different. The people from, Ukraine and Russia here, or the people from South Africa and Venezuela, and all through Europe. And it's, that is very eye-opening and very educational, and I really value that.
Definitely meeting different cultures. And I've talked to people in America and they've never even left America. Some
Oh,
people, like I've traveled all over the world. I've been in the States before, I've been to Asia, I've been all over the place, and now I have freedom. I'm going to be really traveling around. I was only saying to Laura there, why don't we just take off for 3 months? I just bring my laptop. That's all I
yeah,
need. The company runs, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, it's a shame. And I think the US is particularly prone to that. And part of it, I think, is the historical branding. Again, when you're brainwashed and conditioned to believe you live in the greatest planet, the greatest country on the planet, that limits why should I go explore other things. Now, of course, geographically, the United States is huge. So there is tremendous geographical diversity, which satisfies a lot of travel desire. But and there are certainly different cultural aspects in different places in the US, but breaking out of that into really experiencing something different, is something that unfortunately more folks in the US than many other places are less inclined to do, because
Yeah,
the world is
yeah,
painted as a scary place if you're not in these borders.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely, definitely. Yeah. Let's touch a little bit on your book. What have you been writing about? Tell us a little
Well,
bit about that. I know it's not
thank
finished
you.
yet,
And
but
yeah, and some of the themes that I've wove through here are really the genesis of this. And again, reading a lot of the economic books, the monetary books, um, the thing that jumped out at me, and it really just kind of came to me, is, you know, we need to incorporate love into this. And so, I'm trying to target it to two markets. Some folks who don't know anything about Bitcoin, don't know anything about money and what's going on, who might be a little intimidated to pick up a book that have, charts and graphs and lots of history of money stuff as a first book, when they think, I need to understand this a little bit more. And so walking them through, what Bitcoin's the problems, how Bitcoin is a potential solution. At least consider it. And open your mind to it, form your own opinion. And then ultimately, it's more than just, it's more than about, some new investment, some way to get rich quick. It's about a whole new paradigm shift. And that has affected everything from our view on relationships. I'm talking about, high and low time preference, about, it takes a very low time preference to decide you're going to be in a long-term relationship and raise children, versus going to a bar and meeting somebody to hook up with. These are
yeah,
ramifications of our orientation towards consume and extract, or add value and contribute. And so that's sort of the, part of the inspiration. And again, the second part is trying to speak to the folks in the Bitcoin community who are doing tremendous, work and educational work. Go a couple of layers on the onion deeper to think about, let's not fight about whether you're a vegan or a carnivore. That's not what's important here. All right. If we've got a base, what we want to create here in the enduring universal principles that there is polarity within individuality. They're not two opposites. They're two aspects of life. We've got to embrace that. We've got to embrace the interconnected nature of all of us, and look at the thread being love. It's not going to hurt us, even the world doesn't look like love to me now. Look what's going on here. Look what's going on. Yeah, look what's going on, in other parts of the world. Or people who steal or rob. Well, if they don't have an economic way to feed their family and they love their family, they're going to do things which aren't very loving. But underneath of it is connected, something that we can't define very well. You can't check a box for it. You can't put a formula, but hopefully most of us know it's the most important thing in our lives. So why isn't why isn't that the first principle that we build our new society on top of? Because if we build it on top of, force,
hate and fear and force and fighting.
Control, yep.
Yeah.
Those books have been written. We've all read the dystopian nightmares, of 1984 and all those things. We can dream that as our dream. And unfortunately, if you look at Hollywood movies and things like that, they bring things into a vision, which then we end up creating. Let's not create Mad Max in our reality,
Yeah.
Yet we seem to be creating this.
Let's visualize positivity and love and hope and kindness out there, and we'll attract that. I'm a firm believer, whatever we believe or whatever comes out of our mind, we attract it back into us.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing was created without a vision or dream for it. You have to have a vision of a bridge and how you want to trans people from one side, of a valley to the other. So you have to have that vision before you then create it. So vision is what is guiding us, okay? And what are we going to dream? What are we going to vision?
Yeah. That's why every year I do a vision board and I put it up on my wall, and I'm looking at that all the time. And I know some people might think this is a little bit crazy, but a lot of them things come to reality for me.
Absolutely.
And it's even so much that even like the last vehicle that I bought, and I wasn't even thinking about it when I bought it. It was coming off the low loader, and there was different ones there, and I picked this particular one. And it was only after a week later when I went back and I collected it, and I took it off the lot, and I drove down, and I was walking into a McDonald's to get a coffee before I drove home. And I said, that's the exact truck or Jeep that we call it here. That's on my vision board. The exact same color, the exact same bull bars. I couldn't believe it.
Sure.
Honestly, it was the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But I was looking at that all year until it just landed right in front of me. And even when I was buying it, I didn't even realize it was the same one. It's only after I bought it and I drove it away and I was walking into that McDonald's, it just hit me. The picture, the vision came back into my head, and I looked around and I says, that's the exact same one.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's hard for many to embrace that way of doing business, that way of operating life, because as we go back, we talked about earlier, we're fed a lot of things. We're conditioned, we're told what we are, we're told what the program is, we're told what's possible, we told what we can have, what we can't have. And so, our wings are clipped in terms of our ability to really vision something different. And I think we all, we've had probably experiences, many of looking at somebody and like, oh, that's impossible. I could never do that. And the more of us are saying that, then the more we stick in the same place. And unfortunately, if one wants to be complain and just be a victim and live in a victim consciousness of I can't do that, I wasn't given this, so I can't do that.
You're going
Then
to
you don't.
manifest that, and that's what's going to come to you. And that's what
Yeah,
happens with a lot of people.
yeah, and it's sad. It's really sad because everybody has tremendous possibility. We all grow up in different circumstances. We're all going to have different probabilities, as distinct from possibilities of manifesting certain things. And yet we all have that possibility. I think at the Bitcoin Atlantis conference, a woman from Africa was speaking, and again, it was the idea of, we don't know how many Einsteins there are out there and the contribution they could make because they don't have the opportunity. They're not discovered. They're not given the on-ramp or the pathway to use, their talents, their wisdom, their vision for how something could be created. And the world's going to be a better place if more of those people rise up, guided by vision and love, to create a planet that we can all sustainably live on and do whatever the heck we want to do in our little piece of the world to contribute and add value.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. So that was it. It was amazing meeting you. I like to keep these for about an hour because sometimes people just an hour is kind of enough for people's
Absolutely.
attention span. They start drifting then. But it was
Absolutely,
amazing
yeah.
talking to you.
Thank
And if
you.
people want to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch with you? Give yourself a bit of a
Yeah,
plug. And when's the
sure.
book coming out?
Well, hopefully that's going to be out soon. The Bitcoin, the Twitter space is always a good place to connect. So it's bitsofwisdom_IO. And then a very simple little website I had that, for example, has my YouTube videos is bitsofwisdom.io. So those are good places to connect. And I appreciate the reach out and the conversation and the opportunity to build relationships, and again, share with people who are like-minded, who have the vision that we want to create, in this community, and allow many others to learn and contribute or to challenge, and so that we can all create, a new model and hopefully make a transition from, a seemingly decaying system into what's new, something that's going to benefit all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, then. So we'll talk soon, and thank you, Paul.
Thank you. As they say here in Portugal, muito obrigado.